Hi, I'm Faraz Khan, and welcome to Drag and Drop Low Code Unplugged, the podcast where we explore the game-changing impact of low code in software development. Join me in insightful conversations with IT leaders and passionate low code enthusiasts who are at the forefront of this digital evolution. Together, we'll explore how early adoption of low code is giving businesses a competitive edge on a global scale. We'll discuss its impact on software development, dissect its role in transforming businesses, and uncover the ways in which it's reshaping career trajectories. So whether you're a seasoned IT professional or a curious enthusiast, be sure to tune in as we share success stories and unravel the mysteries of low code. Subscribe now and stay tuned for a front row seat to the revolution that's shaping the future of technology. So let's go. Hi, Paulo, and welcome to Drag and Drop podcast.
Hi, Faraz. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you for being our 100th guest on the podcast. It's a real honor for me and for us to have you here and give us your time. So I appreciate it in your office as well.
No, it's great to be here and have the opportunity to talk directly to the community. And you guys have been doing a fantastic job. So
amazing, appreciate it. It'd be good to kind of get straight into things. And the company's been going for over 20 years. It'd be good to start with talking about how your vision has evolved over the years, what you originally had in your mind to kind of where we are now in 2024 and 5.
First of all, I have to say that it's not really my vision. It's a shared vision. A lot of it comes from the community. A lot of it comes from customers. And so if I go back and I see a lot of the type of things that we've put in the product and even process innovations, and I can almost track it to particular clusters of external people and even internal folks here that have really kind of advanced our way of thinking. We feel that a lot of the principles and things that we had in the beginning when we started, basically with just the idea of automating the process of developing software so that people could get to the result faster, and also support the motion of change, because change requests were always painful and very difficult to do. I guess it's we've seen a kind of an evolution of the industry in the past 20 years with the introduction of Agile, 5 years into our life, and then DevOps, and then everyone got into low code, and so a lot of the things that we've thought about how to make things easier and faster and more pragmatic, all of those things eventually got picked up by the industry. But I believe that a lot of the first principles, people haven't really, everything is very incremental, right? And we got a set of first principles that some of them have not been picked up by anyone. And now that we see this new wave of AI and all the products, how there's new opportunity to do products or enhance the products that exist, we see again that we're taking approaches that are slightly more first principle based than the rest of the industry.
And with things evolving, and obviously that comes with challenges, and there's been several challenges you've probably gone through in the last 20 years, and AI has come into the mix, and there's been a lot of discussions about AI, low code, and things like that. What challenges do you see for the low code space kind of going forward that you might have to deal with and think about?
We believe internally, and I personally strongly believe that that what we're talking about, instead of talking about AI, what we're talking about is an introduction of an asset or a technology that really allows us to speed up the process of automation. And in this particular case, it's not automation; it's automation of software, software creation. If we really think, and it's not very complicated to think about this, if we really kind of fast forward a little bit on the real anatomy of how you build software in practice, right? what it means, for instance, to whenever you have a system that's almost built or already in production and you have to make a change. How does that work? Especially when you cope with developer rotation, right?
Yeah.
People don't like to be attached to particular products.
Yeah.
It's a complex thing to have a piece of software and they have to be attached to it for more than 18 months, 2 years. And in practice, what you want is software that can live a little bit independent. And whenever it's needed, you need to change, you can bring a developer that makes that change. And that's as a fulfilling job doing that. I think the issue that one of the things that we really try to solve is how can we make that knowledge transfer, knowledge absorption, so that when you get into something that you've never seen, you can actually, with a very little learning curve, understand what the system does and then do a change very quickly that puts the system in a new state of functionality, but also maintains the same quality and the same non-functional requirements. You don't compromise that level of quality. That's very difficult to do with code. So this is a long-winded answer to tell you that what I think is going to happen is today a lot of the platforms that a lot of the thought process for using AI in the realm of software development is you have AI agents that complement the humans and generate code, right? And you have copilots where the code is small in a way, or it's boilerplate and the likes. But there's these new platforms that are more ambitious, that what they want is that for an artificial beings to be able to replace developers and generate a very large portion of the system. What our experience tells us you don't really need the experience of OutSystems to understand this, but is that the problem ends up by being in the last mile and in the change management. So if you generate a large body of code, and the more complex systems, the better it is, because complex systems are really expensive to build. And so you want to actually have AI help you. There is a sense that there's going to be 15%, 20%. Then you have to go in and start digging in and start validating and certifying and tuning. And the more you get into the tuning of the system, the more you need to bring back a human. In order for a human to take a huge body of code that was generated and understand what's there so that they can make a change without having a terrible life of trying to reverse engineer code that was not produced by them, which is a problem today that we have between developers, right? You actually have to create tools that help you do that. And if you kind of imagine what are these tools are abstractions of concepts. They're going to have a little bit of conversation. There's going to be a little bit of iteration on it. But what we foresee is that you're not, in order to understand code that was generated, you're not going to use tools that are going to be code-based. You're going to use tools that are going to be visual, conversational, and the likes. And so if you start really kind of imagining how the world in the future is going to be, have these platforms that support the role of software development, you realize that if you fast forward, code is going to be buried between these interfaces, visual interfaces, understanding interfaces, conversation, and whatever. And that's very similar to what low code is today. And so we believe actually that the future is going to be competition among low code platforms and not the displacement of low code for developers. And if you see also the evolution of the developer, we believe that the low-code developer is an evolution in terms of career than a pure, very standard code-based developer.
Yeah, and I think, you understand what we do, and we understand, a low-code developer offers so much more than, a traditional developer, where, they're involved in the business a lot more as well. And the developer role is definitely evolving, within the low-code space from our experience as well. So
we've always seen that in the community, right? That's one of the most rewarding things we see when we talk with our developers is that when you start operating a platform like OutSystems, and you can get something in production in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Something medium, like small medium.
Yeah.
And something bigger in like 1 week.
Yeah.
Right? That's so very different from the experience that a lot of us, computer scientists and developers, had in the past, or with other type of technologies, where you go on and on and on and on, and you test it, and it kind of works but you know that in order now to move that into production, you have to set up these architectures and all of these things. And having all of that coming out of the box, so that you basically just worried about talking about high-level architectures of things, functional architectures, and then really tuning and adapting the system to very quickly solve a business problem and address these business problems. For instance, in my life, I spent in my early parts of my career a couple of years doing a project which I've never seen production.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, in the end of the 90s and 2000s, and even today when you go into very large projects, if you really want to build these mission critical projects, even if you have MVPs and even if you have sprints and the likes, sometimes you if the system is very big, you only see like the final version of the system several months down the line. At the time, we're talking about years, right?
Yeah.
That was a very frustrating experience. I hated it, actually. I hated it with a passion.
Yeah.
I wanted to see some incremental evolution, building something and seeing it working. And a lot of the impetus for OutSystems is, why isn't this the standard way of building software? Why can we not iterate? Now there is this notion of DevOps and Agile. It's become like common. But you also have to have the platforms that allow you to support continuous delivery, continuous integration. You have to have features that are standard to be able to operate a system, like tracing, observability, built-in security gates, everything that you need to do in these platforms that remove all that toil away from actually delivering true functionality to the business.
Yeah. And, with the platform evolving, over the years and obviously talking about AI, how do you feel, there's already AI features within the platform. How do you feel AI is going to reshape the low-code space and the OutSystems platform even going forward?
It's really relatively simple to understand how this thing works. It's not complicated. If you look into the fact that change is probably the most difficult thing to cope for human beings and for digital systems. So for biological assets and digital assets, it's the most difficult thing. And change is more than ever a fundamental fixture. The business cycles are compressing. We've seen them compress in the past 20 years. They've been compressing to a point now where the business plans are being done. A 3-year business plan is what used to be a 10-year business plan, right? So everything is compressed. And when you compress, means the change you have to support very fast levels of change at a much smaller, much higher frequency. Since everything that we do today as a digital asset underneath, either workflow, portal, whatever type of system, you need to build it to support that new initiative. The system needs to reflect, the digital system needs to reflect the ratio of change of the business. And so from a first principle point of view, you just have to think that we're having less change in the future, kind of slowing down. It keeps on increasing exponentially. Maybe there is a little bit of a more linear progression, but still change is going to continue to be more frequent. So I think everything that we think about is the software development lifecycle. You really need to see not only the development, but how does the full cycle can be automated. Because what you want is, you want to be able to make a change that's instantaneous. That's the idea, right? And with the least amount of toil and the least amount of chaotic lower of quality.
Yeah.
You don't want to make a change that introduces bugs, or you don't want to make a change that makes the system less intelligent, for instance. So everything that we're looking into, because the OutSystems platform supports the full life cycle, right? From developing, assuring quality assurance, kind of deployment, and then operating and running, and then collecting feedback. We're looking into what is the biggest bang for the buck in terms of removing toil and compressing the cycle of change. How can AI help? And Mentor, which is really the digital assistant that kind of touches all those points in the software development life cycle. I mean, one obvious one is in the app generation and that course and the editing of the app in the beginning. But you can imagine, and we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline for opportunities to further accelerate and improve quality, non-functional requirements, security built, supported by AI in the middle of that cycle.
And talking about the role of a developer with AI coming into the mix, do you feel that eventually, it'll continue to be like a partner with a developer, or there's this thing about, will AI replace developers and no one will have jobs?
I can give you our opinion on the way we're looking into this, and what we believe is true for the next 3 to 5 years. Really, it's difficult to kind of project beyond that,
yeah.
But I think we can safely say that in the next 3 to 5 years, what really you have is exactly what you do as a low-code developer. I think the transition from a low-code developer to platforms that have AI in the middle is a very small step, because low-code developers already complement the areas of the system that today are the ones that will probably be automated the latest and will not be automated now. So as we said, most platforms most code tools and whatever eventually they might converge, be more integrated, but everything will look like a low-code experience. The low-code developer, what we see is that is going to kind of elevate a little bit towards definitely a more architectural work, where there is help there also, and we can see that in our own development and research that we're doing. There's going to be help there. But looking at the big system, being able to have more tools to create bigger systems in a smaller amount of time, and with the possibility of evolving from someone who's doing things that are a little bit smaller, less complex, to rapidly evolve to be able to do these big systems, and so have a much bigger impact as a low-code developer, to become a low-code senior, low-code architect. And in fact, when you look into low-code architect or low-code senior or whatever, it's really roles that are not very different from what you do in other technologies, right? It's just that the way you operate them, you're way more efficient in doing them. AI is not going to replace. There's always going to be developers, architects, and senior, more and more and more, designing these systems. Because also the potential is that instead of just tackling 4 projects in the backlog, you can now tackle 20. Yeah. Okay, there's always work to do. And so I think there's going to be increased more productivity and more backlog that's going to get flushed through platforms like OutSystems.
And, with since kind of AI has come into the mix, there's this conversation around why use low code with AI when you can just go down the traditional way with AI. So, what would you say to, why should people consider going with low code versus traditional development?
For people, and we have already some experience as an industry of doing these things. If you try to build an agent with today most common pattern, which is RAG, where you augment a general purpose large language model with a stack of content, and you integrate it with data that you have, and you put it you put that agent now behind the firewall, beyond the portal or a mobile app and whatever. You start looking at all the components, integrating with vector databases, workflowing, accessing, managing a database of content, updating that content in real time as you understand whether the content is right or wrong. The patterns of operating of a system that has agents or that has AI in the middle involves an extremely large amount of traditional software.
Yeah.
Okay. And part of the difficulty that a lot of teams that are AI based have faced, maybe a little bit in the recent past, was the way they then collaborate with software engineers. Because in the end, you end up by needing a lot of the stuff that software engineers, that developers had worked for the past 20 years, right? And so when you look at that complexity, you realize that actually in order to build a production system, you end up by needing a tremendous amount of building blocks to do that. And actually, I think what we're going to see is low-code platforms that specialize on building agents. Okay, similar to what we're doing with the AI Agent Builder and with and the fact that when we have customers that are willing to accept the non-deterministic nature of these agents, and they want to actually start creating business applications with these agents, you realize that more than 60% of the system ends up by using workflows and user interfaces, mobile interfaces, web integrations with a lot of stuff, integrations in real time, which is, for instance, things like data fabric are tremendous. Things like an event architecture that allows you to then compose multiple agents into an agentic system. A lot of people that are coming into this area, especially coming from the AI, they believe, oh, we can do this in Python.
Yeah.
And then when you go into production and you start having bugs and the thing crashing and not scaling, and now you have to put billing so that you can count the amount of tokens what is the cost of operating that system? You realize, my God, this doesn't stop. This just supporting an agent is huge. Yeah, exactly. That's why it takes we invest so much in supporting a platform like this that allows these things to run in production without failure. I think also what we see is that the combination of low code with agents is crucial because the applications end up by being an hybrid, but also the development of the agents themselves. The same thing that we saw when the low code, no code category became sexy, where we saw 150 no code tools appearing.
Yeah.
Now we're going to see tens of tools that are going to somehow help people design agents and the likes. And then they're going to have the same issues that whenever you try to compose these systems with other things, you're going to want integration. And we see agents fundamentally as another element in the low-code collection of assets, together with workflows, front ends. And in order for you to build a full system, you need not only the agent, but you need all the rest.
Yeah. And it's something that we hear about a lot is from your customers that, when we talk to them about their experience of first seeing the platform, and they talk about things like, when your team went to present the platform and your architects are there doing a demo, building something for them in that meeting, and showing them the features, where before the meeting, they're not so keen to kind of be there. And by the end of it, being quite convinced that actually this does solve a lot of problems and does take away a lot of those, manual kind of things that the current developers are doing.
There's two moments,
Yeah.
actually, which I find interesting. And a lot of the people that have experience with the OutSystems world can validate that.
Yeah.
But there is like a first moment, which is whenever someone, especially from the business side, or they see that thing and it looks like magic, right? Because you click and you do one click publish and suddenly you have an application running. But the question then comes from a lot of skeptical architects and people that are really experienced and know how complex it is. They start asking, what are the trade-offs here?
Yeah.
Does it scale?
Yeah.
Is it secure? What does this do? And does it run in an interpreter, for instance, the way some of our competitors do, right? Which basically creates a monolith for the app, and it has a bunch of problems, right? Or does it generate code? Is this code validated? Whatever. Where does it run? Is it scalable? Does it run inside containers? And you start getting technical people hate this opacity, right? And I think one of the things that has been very rewarding, and I still have these calls today, is I get people that are like champions of OutSystems in customers or whatever, and that after they really try the first project and they are after 2 or 3 demo sprints, and you start having testing people involved, is that the quality of the final result is so high. I used to have people calling me when I was closer to the field, and whatever, which was, by the way, a very rewarding part of my job. I used to get people calling me. Do you know that it's funny? It's the first time we see continuous demos where there's never a bug. The system doesn't crash. It always works. Sometimes we see things that are not supposed to be there, like they're functionally incorrect as we're developing the project. But we don't see bugs. We don't see the system blue screens or 404s or whatever. The URLs always work. The system is fast. It's wow. Yeah. And I think there is an appreciation after you use the platform for how powerful and how mission critical not only O11 but also ODC. Yeah. I mean, what we do, trying to do as much quality as possible, and having the right architecture underneath the platform to be able to support that.
Yeah. And you mentioned, when you were closer to the field, I guess back in those days as well, it was probably low code was less known, to people out there. So it's probably a harder sell, to kind of get that into businesses.
It was harder and easier. Okay. And now it's easier and harder.
Okay.
Well, in the past, we were just a weird animal, right? Yeah. I mean, we had designed the platform. What if people thought, you guys are replicating some of the tools of the 80s?
Yeah.
And the platform was built in such a different way from, if you really understand how the tools, the RAD tools of the end of the 80s were built, and case tools, you understand how different the approach was. But the moment we did the demo and we show it, we had to write, we had some documentation where we had a paper, like the title was Too Good to Be True at the time, where we actually explain why it makes sense, why we could do what we did, right? And we had to explain all the investment we did in terms of engineering and whatever, to be able to convince people that the applications, the runtime applications, were actually really well designed, were mission critical.
Yeah.
When we got a lot of competition, when low code became sexy and people started realizing this thing makes sense, we start competing with a lot of substandard products, or products that had a different approach. Like some products, for instance, are really meant for something that never worked in the past and continues not to work, which is the citizen developer.
Yeah.
Okay. We always thought this is, again, the same. We repeated with Microsoft Access and Lotus Notes. Then we went to SharePoint, and now, there's a series of tools again. Because the issue is always that it's very easy to do simple things and to have people that are not programmers, really, or not developers, to be able to build things that are very simple. But what we find is that if the complexity increases a little bit, you end up by hitting a wall immediately. Either it's a knowledge wall or it's a tool wall where you have to jump into code, for instance, to do stuff. And the moment you start getting into issues like reusability, division of concepts like architecture breakdowns, things that are crucial to be able to maintain a system that's maintainable, a larger system, you start having issues with having citizen developers. I mean, a marketeer is not her or his job to understand what domain-driven design or division of concepts or whatever, or APIs, reusability and versioning. These type of concepts that are needed to build large systems and exist even if the abstractions like low-code abstractions are very high. You need to understand these things. You need to have a divide and conquer approach in your mind as a developer. And so we always thought this is it looks easy, but when with the evolution, it becomes an impossible problem. So we always need developers. We always believe that we need developers. What we can do though is make developers' life much more fulfilling. And that's
that's amazing. And I was lucky enough I was in Denver when you announced Morpheus, and then a few months ago I was there when you spoke about Mentor. Can you kind of talk me through what inspired Mentor and what challenges is it going to address in software development?
What we thought is when you look into the metrics of productivity, what you think is how can we do more functionality in a smaller amount of time, in a way that you never hit a wall. You can always make tuning and changes and whatever. So you always have the capacity to tune the system. But it's not only compressing the first version or the MVP of the solution that you're building, but it's also assuring that the cycle of change or the cycle of improvement that follows is also very, very productive. And we always thought that AI has a role to be able to accelerate that production. And so what Mentor, first installment, one of the sub tools of Mentor really is this capacity to, out of requirement documents or unstructured text, to be able to go through process of creating user stories, having those and those user stories being passed to generators that for us are relatively more easier to build, that allow us to produce models low code in a way. And so that first tool, the tool that's most impressive, are tools that really generate code in the beginning. But when we did a lot of experiments with this in terms of developer experience, and it's really hard because when you generate code, that's why when we see a lot of announcements of platforms generating code, we go like, what's next? What is next to this? Because if you want code that's pre-generated, you have trillions of lines of legacy code. Okay. Oh, I don't want that. I want the one that was generated by AI. But why? I mean, it's code that's there. Now you have to do something with it. You have to understand it and change it. And so when we went and saw what we could generate, and we look into the process of the generation process is very difficult to predict, that you can't generate 100% of a system automatically. Okay, there's a lot of interactions, a lot of input, and therefore there's a lot of low code or no code type of interactions. That's what I meant, right? And so for us, it's really trying to understand how do you actually manipulate the change portion of the process, because generating something, it's I'm not saying it's easy, but it's going to get there. It's the way you tune it and generate smaller pieces, and then you don't generate something that's going to destroy a bunch of stuff that you've already validated. Then you go back, and that's the stuff that we're experimenting. And in the Mentor ecosystem, Um, we're working hard with a lot of the community and a lot of our customers to tune this and to learn how this process is going to happen, because it's very, very, it has some changes. And so we want to understand how the developer experience becomes much, much better. Really.
And you spoke about generative software cycle, in when you were talking about mentor. Can you elaborate a bit more on that and kind of what does that mean?
It's really kind of a fancy name for this notion of having AI generate software. But when we talk about the generative software cycle, really what we meant is the fact that you generate the software, but you now have to edit it and understand it, and you have to be able to assure that it's compliant and that it's stable. And when you make a change, the change is contained. So that there's a whole collection of issues here on the way you implement this. Like, for instance, if you switch LLMs, and then it's because now you have one that's either cheaper, more performant, or just have a better neural network, the generated code is going to change. And so if you repass the version of the system again, is it going to regenerate the whole thing, or is it just going to generate pieces? I mean, there's so many details on the way this type of systems need to work, that that area of generative software, and it's really something that we believe, with the experience we have with low code, because a lot of these patterns, a lot of these problems, a lot of these last mile issues, a lot of the detail issues, that the devil is in the details. We see that a lot because we see the experience we've had with the community, for instance, and the customers over the past 20 years. We see a lot of patterns existing as we put these AIs helping generate a software. And so we like to call this, it's a new era, but in a way, it's pretty cool for everyone who's in this community, because the only thing this can go is forward and bigger.
Yeah. And I guess, like you said, the feedback from your customers and MVPs within OutSystems Community kind of helps improve all the features and kind of, make it better.
Again, we cannot have the I think the hubris of thinking that we really can design these systems in the vacuum. I mean, we're talking really frontline research here. Research, pragmatic research. What is the anatomy of the experience that you have to do to build systems? And the way the teams interact now is changing also. The way it interacts with the business is changing. If you throw in the concept of agent in the middle of the systems that you have to build, now you also have to build these agents. The life cycle, the tuning of these agents is also different. How do you integrate that with deterministic software so that together you can actually build a functional system? There's a lot of issues, and we're blessed. I think because we have such a large community, people that are really interested in helping and participating and contributing, and we need that. We desperately need that. Really.
Yeah. And you spoke about the shift left approach, and can you kind of explain how that will help kind of teams early in their process, of a project?
So shift left is shall I say, the concept that makes a lot of sense when you look into continuous delivery, continuous integration, which is if you're everything that sometimes you do as a postmortem, like instrumenting the application, for instance. When all code is ready, now you have these tools that you instrument it and they capture information from it. In the case, for instance, of OutSystems, we instrument every time you publish, even in pre-production. And so we immediately start having traces of the way the system works. That's an example of shift left. The other one that we did, for instance, is we looked into the phase of testing, or QA, and we said, instead of doing testing, can we actually make sure that the quality, the dependency analysis is there in development time, so that whenever we actually produce code, the code has much less bugs, and so it's much higher quality. That's another example of shift left. So what we're interested in in things. It's always good to see if we could, without introducing more overhead, to do tasks that you usually do later, to try to automate them as soon as possible. I think, for instance, one of the things that we really can go on is actually being able to start with the right architecture for very large systems much sooner, instead of trying to discover that, but at the same time making it really, really simple. And so some of the research that we're doing in terms of the life cycle, using, for instance, Mentor, relies on how can we make sure that out of the perception of the system, that we can start already with the architecture, with the right architecture, at least 90% of what we believe is going to be the right architecture, because things will change during the cycle, right? And that's another example of shift left. So everything that can be automated and then pushed, so that whenever you do the first publish or the first move into production, the system is as close as possible to being a production system. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And if we can avoid having tools or having work being done later in the cycle, and push it more when we're actually designing and inferring from that design things that would probably only make sense that in a traditional, with the 100 tools that you use in traditional development life cycles, if we can integrate it and push it to the left, push it to the beginning of the process, we will do that. There's advantage in doing that, because you get production better, high quality software very early, right? In the first publish, in the first version, after 24 hours. There's an inherent first principle of goodness in doing that, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I guess from the amount of people that have requested early access shows that they're all quite excited and keen to see it and have a go at it.
Yeah, there's an interesting aspect of looking into these platforms, is that they have limited coverage. And one of the things the world needs to get used to, especially software developers, we're used to systems that don't work, but we call them bugs.
Yeah.
We're not used to systems that work well 80% of the time and 20% they don't and need to be taught. Systems like that, we call them people, okay? Or juniors, or people that are learning on the job. But now we have... a lot of these solutions are non-deterministic, and they have that nature of they are most of the times right, but every so often they're wrong. Okay, and the difficulty that the help mentor is going to be in that category, because it's a system based on AI, and so it's non-deterministic. It will have, sometimes it doesn't work completely, and so it needs to be tuned and needs to be evolved. And so everything that we build, more than actually the release of Mentor, is the process of improving Mentor based on feedback from the community and whatever, and improving it every week or every 2 weeks. Yeah. So that's really what we meant by this first release. Yeah. We want to increase the accuracy of these systems, because the issue is providing the tool sets and the capacity for the system to help a developer, but also have the capacity for the developer to validate the last mile of things that they might not get completely right. Okay, that's the nature of the AI.
Yeah. And going back to the platform, and about something that's talked about a lot is scalability. For enterprise applications.
Yeah.
How's kind of OutSystems, kind of addressing that, and how can you kind of tell people that it is scalable, for enterprise applications?
I never understood why people
are saying that.
Are saying that, but maybe it's because we're not doing the best possible job in explaining, for instance, the architecture of ODC, the ODC stack, to people that maybe they're not experts in cloud architectures. But if you look, for instance, into the elements of scalability, so what do you want in scalability? In scalability, typically when you have an application that has a UI, like a mobile application, and you want to support very large number of users and transactions, and better than that, or more complex than that, you want to support what's called Black Friday moments, which is when there's a marketing campaign or whatever, and suddenly you have a spike of millions of users coming into the system at the same time. And so scalability then measures the capacity of the system to elastically adapt to that load that's coming. So where does that load surfaces? Typically is in the computation of the code that runs in the backends. And in the case of, for instance, ODC, that code is fundamentally running inside these very lightweight containers using Kubernetes and the likes. And the way the system is configured is whenever you have a spike of load, the system starts popping out more containers so that they could handle more transactions in parallel. All of this is auto-elastic, is auto-scalable. It's done automatically. But you also have other aspects, which is, what about the database? If you have a tremendous amount of transactions on a database that has a lot of data and you have a lot of queries, how does it scale? And here we use a lot of parameterizations and configurations of our standard database, which in this case is the AWS version of Postgres for ODC, for instance, so that we can, for instance, sustain very high loads, systems with very high loads, but they can still scale horizontally and the likes. Then we have networks. Then when we generate events, we want to make sure that those events are generated in real time, and therefore the architecture of those systems is using event-driven systems like Kafka-based or whatever. So there's tons of things that are underneath the covers that whenever we model and then we generate the application, we prepare the applications to run within this environment so that it's scalable at the level that it would be very difficult if you had to do it by hand. Okay. So we have customers now that want to actually test the scalability of platform. And ODC is way more scalable, for instance, than O11, just because the sheer way the architecture is built. And we fundamentally have a system that can scale to hundreds of millions of users. It's an edge case, but we've built the Rolls Royce of scalability. Not many people, it's not maybe 80% of the use cases are going to take advantage of there, but every so often, it's one of those things where every so often you have the need for that. And whenever it cannot do it, you fundamentally crash the system. And we don't want that to happen. Okay. And so we've built all of this, we built these capabilities so that you can actually securely put a billing system that processes billions of events daily, for instance, without the system stressing about it. We want a system where you could actually produce an interface for 100 million users, for instance, across the world, from multiple sides of the world, and the latency doesn't increase beyond 200 milliseconds. We wanted to build a platform that supports you building systems like that in a way. We wanted to provide kind of a Netflix in a box.
Okay. And, you've touched on it already on my next question, but, ODC is here, and, the OutSystems platform has evolved over years. What kind of, where did the decision come from to stop at O11 rather than O12, and evolving and going to the next level? Why did you decide to just build a whole different platform in ODC?
The issue with O11 and ODC is really O12. I think the way we took this project in order to be able to make it we had an unexpected side effect in the community that we didn't expect, and in the market that we didn't expect. But whenever you understand why we did what we did, what was the decision-making process, maybe it makes a little bit more sense what it is. And maybe we can dispel some of the FUD that's being generated by some of our competitors and the like. But what happened was that we have been able to fundamentally evolve applications that when they got deployed, they get deployed as kind of a web type of monolith. And so whenever you have an installation with the modules and the likes, and you publish, the architecture really kind of generates all that code, and that code ends up by running in these relatively large front-end servers, which then scale by you adding another front-end server. That, for instance, doesn't allow us to do auto-scaling. You have to pre-scale and to pre-prepare. That's what O11, that's the way O11 support scale is, by you pre-allocating capacity. That's very costly. Actually, we do support a lot of that cost for our customers that's supporting our cloud, but it's not a good architecture if you have very spiky loads like Black Friday type of moments. And so we had a situation where we've been trying to introduce a lot of the concepts of cloud native architectures already for several years, in the past 7 to 8 years. And it was difficult to do that with the power. The power of the OutSystems platform is so huge. The amount of code is there's so much stuff going on there that every time we try to do this incrementally, it kind of got delayed, honestly. And it took us about 2-3 years to realize that if we want to really support our customers in the next generation of stacks that they're going to ask us, we need to bite the bullet here. This is it. And so what we did is we did what a lot of companies do when they need to do change management, and we created something on the side. And when we created something on the side, what we wanted to do is the development is done by separated teams and whatever, so that they could run without having the hindrance of having to support the install base, right? And so that's why we did it that way. What ended up by doing is we gave the impression to the market that O11 is not compatible with ODC, okay? Or at least that's what the community and competitors end up by saying. But the fact is, if you look into the model, the language of O11, the differences from what is the model of O11 to what is the model of ODC, they're very small. And you can attest that, because how long does it take you to upgrade an O11 developer to an ODC developer?
Not too long, but sometimes it can,
yeah. I mean, if you're talking about very large architectures and whatever, then that's where there's a fundamental difference. Because now what ODC at the very high level, the instead of building monolithical system, it actually builds a collection of services. But the languages, even the environments, they're very, very simple. We have customers who fundamentally said it took us 1 hour, a course of 1 hour, okay, just to get going. And then they hit some little bits of difference as they go into designing these systems. So the learning curve, the fundamental migration problem of these systems in a developer platform is really the break of the promise of knowledge transfer of the developer. And in our case, we didn't want to break that. We wanted to create a system that was as future forward as possible, but at the same time would be as compatible as possible in terms of the low-code language. But the reason why we built it is, if we hadn't done that, and it cost us many millions to do this. But if we hadn't done that, we would be in a situation today where a lot of the stuff customers have been asking us for the past 10, 15 years in terms of non-functional requirements, ways of looking into security differently, supporting of cloud migrations and upchips, we would be in a much more tough situation, and we would have to go back to our customers and tell them that we don't see a future for the way we evolve the stack.
And in our role, obviously, I speak to your customers all the time, for hiring purposes and other things. And something that has been spoke about for a while is pricing changes, within OutSystems, and we get a lot of feedback about that. So I thought it'd be good to speak to you about, your views, how you looking to address them, and and deal with that side of things.
Yeah. First of all, let's understand what's behind. Well, what is the anatomy of the pricing of OutSystems, and what is behind that pricing structure? We've always, from day one, we decided that the value of the platform, as a developer platform, a software development platform, is really in the productivity that it provides, and the reliability and the assurance, and the fact that you really can build and maintain very large systems with a much smaller team, and a team that you can rotate. Okay, so the ROI really is an ROI, a return on investment. That's something that appeals to IT departments that want to build and support unique medium to large systems, but don't really, they cannot afford having 400 people doing that. They can only afford having 40.
Yeah.
And these guys are completely overloaded with work and whatever. So that was the value proposition. So when we thought about this, is we don't really wanted to sell per seat. We wanted to veer away from actually a pricing that's really annoying, which is the seat-based pricing. Because if we sold based on number of users, for instance, or seats of users, we would have a problem if you want to scale a small non-mission critical application like a directory app to 80,000 internal users. And we didn't want to sell seats, developer seats. Because developer seats, the only thing it means is that we would be improving productivity, but we make money out of putting more developers into one installation. So we didn't want to do that. That would be against our automation and productivity announcements. The best way we thought of doing this is, what if we sell per amount of software that you build? And the first thought that we had was, okay, let's price it per app, right? Now that's very easy when you are a low-code, no-code platform where you are intrinsically limited on what you can do with these apps. So if the apps are of a particular kind, and they're always kind of small or less complex, or they do one particular thing, you can actually sell per app. And if you sell per app, it's fair, right? I mean, you calculate what is the price per app, and what is the return on investment of that price per app? Our problem was that we would have people coming in and building a billing system, which is one app. That billing system is the equivalent of probably 100 mini apps.
Gotcha. Okay.
And now we're out of, we don't want to do this with users. We don't want to do it with seats. We think so what we try to do is the biggest the system, the more value the platform has. So what we wanted was not to penalize when you start having smaller installation, but as you build more software, we want to get paid a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's where our variable of pricing got created. And we used to have something that was very complex and opaque. It was called software units back 15 years. And then we changed it to something where we could kind of take the minimal types of objects that we have that would give us a sense of the size. It's not scientific, but we thought, what are the things that truly measure when a system can go from small to big in one particular area? And that's why we selected an application object, which can be a screen, can be an API, or can be a database. And now with ODC, because we introduced event-driven architectures, we introduce the event type whenever you define an event, because you can build a very large system with events that does not affect any others or affect very little. And so we thought, okay, this is fair. It measures also, it's another measurement of the size of the system. What happened was that we made a mistake around one mistake. in our life, which was we had the point where it doesn't matter, but we did a pricing change where we decided to accompany the SaaS model of charging per seat.
Yeah.
And what happened was that when we charged per seat, we suddenly had no longer, it was a stupid decision. We made a really bad mistake. Because what we did is it forces us very quickly after the third of our app, for instance, for internal users, you would, I'm talking about users, like internal users, you would cover the 3 or 4 apps would cover the full, all the employees in the company, would touch all the employees in the company. But it still had built relatively low value in terms of the software thing. And now we were faced with, okay, we have to now sell, we have to give away for the customers to run these 4 applications for 100,000 internal users. But we didn't have the price. So we had to ask them to pay a little bit more. We gave huge discounts. And that was what created what's called the unlimited AO. Yeah. It was not unlimited. It was just that the variable, we made a mistake with the pricing where we put the variable there. That made the company, that was very bad in terms of a contract, a partnership contract between OutSystems and our customers. And it was probably one of the worst mistakes I made in my life here. Basically, what we try to do is, and what we've been trying to do, sometimes with more success and less success, is going back to these customers who got used to basically just pay the same thing and continuously and add more and more apps to say, can we please go back to a model where we get paid? If we get paid a little bit more if you have, if you build more. And that's what, and that's what we will keep. We will keep the AO model. There's ways to actually incentivize and to predict what is the AO count. There's way for us to do deals that are very good for customers, where they feel like they can build whatever they want and whatever. And we're working on these things with a lot of care. But that was what happened with pricing. And today we're still going through the last innings of that translation. But it's just a bad decision that we did at the time, that it cost us a lot and to our community to recover.
I appreciate you talking about that. Shifting to, talking about the community itself, and, it's a large community globally. The community came together not long ago in Amsterdam. Can you tell me about, the role they play in kind of, spreading the message of OutSystems and the innovation that OutSystems is doing?
I think it's a crucial aspect. We've always really, really enjoyed supporting, and we're very grateful for what the community does, actually. I think that just the help, just the forums, for instance, the champion, the way they champion the product and the value there. It's only fair. We would not be what we are without the OutSystems community, honestly. They not only play a tremendous role. I'm very, very glad that we've invested a lot in our unit that supports developers and that supports the community. And I think they're doing a really good job there. But I think there is roles we want to further increase the support, and we see the community as fundamentally just OutSystems, an extension of OutSystems. We see the MVPs as our valuable collaborators. It's, for us, there's no difference really. And so we want to make that more to make that easier. The usage, the training, the fact that the capacity for the community also to come and convince someone else and say, this is cool. Why don't we use this? And having that support from us. There's everything. We're doing already a lot, but there's always more that we can do.
And even from my experience of speaking to people from the community, they're always willing to promote and kind of, really
it's a fantastic
passionate.
community.
Really
It's a
passionate.
fantastic community. I mean, if you look into, for instance, one, the conference, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different conference from a lot of other conferences. And I used to go to a lot of IT, like brands, Sapphire, for instance, Dreamforce,
Yeah.
You go to these conferences and they're huge and they have a lot of delegates. But the one thing that differentiates the OutSystems conferences from others is that the community of partners and customers and developers and technicals, the conversation you see is usually around, I built this. It's bragging about the innovation that they just did with OutSystems. And then discussing, and then someone else saying, how did you do that with the platform? And then they explaining how they do it. And so there's always an undercurrent of almost like a makers conference.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in a Lego conference or whatever, there's that concept of trying to show what you did with it and talking about the benefit that you had. And then everyone else, but I want to do something similar. How can I do it? And then that support. That's why I think the vibe is so rewarding in these conferences. And I'm very glad after COVID that this year we actually recovered that vibe completely.
Yeah.
From what I remember in the previous ones.
Yeah. And I think, definitely from my experience, even when you announced from last year, Denver and Lisbon, people were itching to kind of get back together and kind of, do things in person, where it's just not the same doing it remotely.
No, it's not. I think we finally understood the trade-off between remote and face-to-face.
Definitely. And, in there's probably many of these, but, in your time so far, what would you say is kind of one or a few of the most rewarding things, you've achieved in the time of OutSystems being founded?
I've had two experiences that were traumatizing that probably influenced my conversation with my colleagues and co-founders when we started OutSystems. One was the fact that I was attached to a project for 2 years and the project got canceled eventually. And the code, I couldn't transfer the code. The code was orphan. And I was one of the architects in this project. And it was, and I thought, this is how much life was wasted. How much lack of impact. How devastating this should be for people. If this happens all the time, and it happens all the time, how can you feel good about what you do?
Yeah.
That was my first thing, right? It was like, wow, this is pain. This is a real pain. And when there's real pain, there's an opportunity to create a business, right?
Yeah.
The second experience was actually when I created the company before this one, before OutSystems. It was a company called Generative. We created in 97 and we sold it in 99. And we did a lot of projects, internet projects, like these big projects. And I never delivered a single one on time and on budget. And a lot of the construction of the product initially was by reverse engineering the reason why these projects went wrong. Those very large build projects, they were custom projects. Why couldn't we get those things on time and on budget? Why couldn't we predict that? And if you look today, when you do a big project in OutSystems, and you take like a project that probably a big GSI would take about 3 years, like a really gigantic project between 25 million to 100 million in personnel and just time and material costs. And you size it with OutSystems. First of all, you realize it's a no-brainer to build that system in OutSystems, okay? But then you size it. You size it using some of the practices that came from the community and also from our professional service. You size it, it's very precise. And you can actually, if you take a couple of weeks, it actually becomes, you have an accuracy in terms of the milestones, probably close to 100%. You size to about 7 months or whatever, 3 years, 7 months, between 7 months to 14 months. And that predictability of the thing going into production, for sure. Okay. I mean, that thing is the epitome of what we have achieved here at OutSystems. Is that compression of speed, but not only that, it's that predictability. And people ask me, how can you actually predict that you're going to hit the milestone? It's not rocket science. It's because we are able to survive any type of project surprises that occur. Because the issue that's related is that the requirements that you thought you're going to implement, the first time you do a demo for the business realizes, oh my God, that's not what we want. We actually remember we have another thing.
Yeah.
And so they keep on piling the scope creep that in the past, you would punish the business, the developers or the software engineers would punish the business by saying, you cannot change scope. That's your fault. You're changing scope. Why are you changing the mind? All this? Yeah. And they don't realize that's the nature of actually systems, and especially systems now when the business changes so fast, right? And so being able to accommodate any type of surprise that forces you to change architecture, that forces you to change UI, forces you to change requirements. When you go and integrate, you realize people lied about what you could get from those APIs. Yeah. The data is all crap, or the SLA of the API is completely wrong. Then you have to build a cache for it. The capacity of the platform to overcome patterns that would, in other technologies, with other technologies doing other projects, it would be catastrophic. It would force you to ask for a delay of 4 months and then another delay of 4 months. And that's why projects never end. Yeah. In OutSystems, those things get solved in a couple of days, sometimes 24 hours, sometimes 3 or 4 days. And if things get delayed, they get delayed in 7 months, they get delayed 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it's not rocket science, just that it's coverage. It's 22 years of looking into all these surprises and building the things that allow you to actually recover from unexpected scope creep or surprises in integrations or scalability or whatever.
Yeah.
You can actually make those changes, improve the system very quickly.
Yeah. It's amazing how you mentioned the traumas is what led you to kind of build, and found OutSystems, but it's obviously helping other people who probably, like you said, are going through the same thing where they're never really delivering what they've gone out to deliver.
Yeah. I think that's it's like the worst is a wasted life, right? I mean, I have very much that philosophy that whatever you do, either professional, especially professional, because I really like to work. That's maybe now I like less to work, but I always worked a lot.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy work. It was fulfilling. And whenever I find patches that are not fulfilling, for me, that toil, that demotivation and whatever, it's pain. Whenever you have pain, you have the first anatomy of, if there is pain, there is an opportunity for you to create a service, a product, a concept, whatever, that you can go and try to remove that pain from that user.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to have pain, and then you have to have people who want to pay for that pain to be removed, right? But that's the anatomy of startups, right? And that's, in a way, the trauma was a positive. I channeled that positively. But the fact that we shouldn't be in things, doing projects that we cannot see business impact and feel cool about the impact that we have. So everything that we'll do in the future, we'll continue to do in the future, is always to maximize that impact. If you want to think about what philosophically drives us.
Yeah. I'm interested to know, if you were to build an app in OutSystems, what would it be and why?
Well, we're building some of those in terms of supporting our go-to-market model. I mean, I think there's a tremendous potential. I see a tremendous potential of re-engineering the supporting platforms for marketing, sales, the journey really of the customer. What in old times was called CRM. Okay, I think there's a lot of potential there. I see a lot of portions of that journey, of the customer, the sales guy, the marketeer, the post sales, customer success, and then from a company point of view, I see a lot of opportunities of just sprinkling agents, AI agents in the middle, and getting a tremendous compression of productivity and removal of toil. But 80% of the system still works traditionally. It's just that the sprinkling of some of these agents would dramatically change that. I mean, here at OutSystems, we have to go through right processes and whatever. But this would be, I can see a lot of opportunity, for instance, for our partners to be able to build some of these templates or some of these things and go to our customers and ask them, do you want to change portions of the way you interact with customers, or the way you sell, the way you interact with partners, and the way you supply. There's tons of opportunities there of just putting some agents in the middle and re-engineering the portal interactions, the workflows, the way you access and process and structure data, put it in structured forms, having semantic search across multiple, now with the data fabric, for instance, being able to tap into all this data, clash it, put an agent on top, then put the portal on it, and man, it's there's so much opportunity now.
Yeah.
It's really
And one day when you're sitting down, looking back, what legacy would you have liked OutSystems to leave in the world of software development and technology?
I don't think like that.
No.
I don't think like that. I think everything is changed very fast, right? Yeah. We're here, we probably bumped, accelerated a piece of lives of some people, or improved the lives of some people, and I think we did that in a lot of ways. I think legacies are for painters and for maybe for kings.
Yeah.
I think everything that we do, we should do the best possible job with the information that we have.
Yeah.
And hope that whatever we do, we didn't create some unintended consequence, like, for instance, social media, right? That you thought, oh my God, it's so cool to have people now contact with each other. And then you have all these children, all these unintended consequences in society. I think the only thing I ask is, I wish none of big bad things happened with some of the innovations. I would like the unintended bad consequences, because you always have some of those bad consequences are residual compared with the benefit that we provided while we were relevant, while we were doing things that are relevant. I think OutSystems will be relevant for some unforeseen time, okay? But eventually, it's life, right? We go through cycles.
Yeah.
So I'm very philosophical about these things. And I just want to do the best possible job for the time that we're here.
Yeah.
And the next 3 to 5 years that we have a future, and we can see that future.
Yeah. And going into 2025, what are you kind of most looking forward to for the year?
I think part of it is really kind of exercising that mojo we've always had with the company, of being very straightforward with everyone, very direct, very supportive, and making sure that we are perceived as doing the right thing. Because we know we're doing the right thing, but we need to also to be perceived as doing the right thing. We know what we need to do in terms of partners, in terms of developers, in terms of the customers. We see also that everyone's very interested in AI, but everyone has difficulty in coping with the non-deterministic nature of AI. That's one thing we found. And that is a challenge for us, which is, how can we help customers that are uncomfortable with the lack of accuracy of AI in general think about systems in a more non-deterministic way, a more statistical way? I think I would like to see more part of the 500 interactions we've been having of people adopting AI. I think I would like to see us being involved into helping customers adopt more of these things. And I think the community is going to be very, very important for this. I would like the community to experiment more with this. And we've been thinking, how can we really have the community experiment more with this type of technology so that they can create some knowledge and some patterns that they can go to customers and explain how this thing works. Because the opportunity is here. I've always been very adamant that we want to give everyone the opportunity to innovate, to do things that from a business point of view, either leapfrog competition or catch up very quickly. In this particular case, the opportunities are all leapfrog competitions. Because whatever you do, it's going to be different and probably is going to improve your business in ways that others haven't thought yet. And we can see how that can be done. We just want more people to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And to experiment with this. And so thinking about that is, and this is actually something that I would probably challenge the community, is what can we do? What can we as the OutSystems community, and OutSystems, and again, I see the community as an extension of OutSystems. What can we do to make everyone accelerate the adoption of some of these concept of these agentic type of systems, so that the benefits, our community can be the first ones to get some of those benefits.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I really appreciate you speaking to me, and spending the time in your office as well. And it was a real pleasure to speak to you and hear your views and what you're looking forward to and what we can expect. So I really appreciate it, Paulo.
No, it was a pleasure. And thank you very much for the support of the community, what you've been doing, and this podcast, which is a fantastic podcast. It was a real privilege.
Appreciate it.
To be here with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.